Greetings and welcome, I'm RSV, this is Dark Falz really a Dark Falz? With Gaveris right around the corner, I want to actually answer the question, is Dark Falz a proper Dark Falz, or is it an imitation, or is the world using Dark Falz as a threat level rather than it being the name of the entity itself? Well, to start with, a lot of people compare this boss to Elder because it has 6 hands. But that's not the only Dark Falz enemy it has comparisons with. It has Luthor's swords, and hangs around the edge of the arena and moves around the edge of the arena like Luthor, as well as has a field wipe ability comparable to Luthor's in the form of you have to break a target or otherwise the boss will kill you. In the case of Gemini, its last phase has 6 legs, Gemini has 6 towers, and it attacks up and down just like Gemini does. And once we have knocked the boss down, it exposes its middle part just like Gemini does. And as for Apprentice, its second form is a giant bug. On top of that, it has Apprentice's laser beam that it shoots out from the middle of itself. Well, one would immediately think that these are all characteristics that would make this thing qualify as a Dark Falz. It has abilities similar to that of existing Dark Falz. However, I want to try to flip that perception. The Dark Falz from base game almost never had anything in common in terms of their attack styles. Gemini was a giant playhouse that had a lot of invulnerable spots. Apprentice spawned a lot of adds. Elder had 6 breakable hands, and summoned 6 hands minions and left the battlefield completely, seemingly to go off somewhere and fight something else. And Luthor's whole gimmick was time. But what's unique about this Dark Falz? Nothing much really, I'd say. Another thing to think about when we are trying to answer this question, is it as powerful as a Dark Falz? Well, I'd wager no. For one thing, we're fighting this so-called Dark Falz on a planet. Now, you may not have fought the previous Dark Falz yourself, but the only one of them that we fight planet-side who has had her power reduced and is starting to wake up from being trapped underground. While we do manage to defeat her, we defeat her after whacking her with AIS swords and have to survive several waves with the mining base towers still intact. As for Gemini, there are canonically hundreds of them when we have to fight one just to get to the Profound Darkness. Elder wrecks the entire Ark's fleet, and Luthor nearly kills Xeon, who is a literal planet. I will not include Persona in this video, I should mention, for the one reason that Persona is way too different from your typical Dark Falz, I would argue. But mentioning Persona gets to the next point. Dark Falz have personalities, and at least the original 5 Dark Falz in Pso2 all had a relation to a sin. Elder being wrath, Persona being pride, Apprentice being envy or lust, depending on how you interpret it, Luthor being greed or envy, again depending on how you interpret it, and Gemini of course being gluttony. Since we have seen no personality from this Dark Falz, and in fact it is completely vocally silent the entire fight, this in my opinion is enough to bring it into question. But even small things down to the way it warps are not very Dark Falz like. Unlike Dark Falz that just disappear and reappear elsewhere, the NGS Dark Falz appears to actually have to move through space. When it disappears after the central tower cannon has hit it, it appears to warp and then you see a streak that goes upwards, implying that it's physically moving, which is very different compared to the previous Dark Falz. Now, another thing to consider is Dark Falz usually can spawn an army of Falzborn or Darkers into existence. Now, it is possible that this Dark Falz is spawning the dolls into existence, but one point of contention for this, I think, is the dolls aren't called Falzborn or Darkers. They are specifically called the dolls. Why is this? Falzborn in base game were called Falzborn regardless of whether or not they were from Elder, Apprentice, Luthor, or Gemini. And I think it would be very weird for Arcs to not be identifying the dolls as Falzborn. Another thing to considering on this note is this quote-unquote Dark Falz might be a Dark Falz lieutenant. The thing that makes me believe this is this boss is surprisingly similar to an Apprentice Falzborn or Vibrus. And this makes me think that there is a real Dark Falz out there, but the Dark Falz we have been given is a fake. But what are the arguments for this creature being a Dark Falz? Well, basically only that SEGA have named it a Dark Falz. I think every other proof of it being a Dark Falz can be in contention, because if its biggest feats are destroying Alio Town and tanking a hit from Central Alio Cannon, any number of things could have been going on there to cause this eventuality. And it can be argued that there are full spawn that could have tanked the Central Alio Cannon and could have destroyed Alio Town on their own. Otherwise, I've been RSV. What are your thoughts on the Dark Falz? And I will see you next time.